Hey, girl. Nice to see you,
Hello, Jody.
even though I just saw
Wonderful.
you in the back room.
Thanks for the invitation to be here. It's an honor and a pleasure, even though we intend to go to some deeper conversations today. Grandmother's
Yeah.
voice is near and dear to my heart. Shall we start with the land acknowledgement?
Yeah, it makes you feel good, girl, and it makes me feel good to hear you so connected. So, yes, of course.
Thank you. So today we pause to honor the land we live upon and the stewards who have cared for it, past and present. The Haudenosaunee, Wendat, and Ottawandaron peoples. This region, rich in the history of Indigenous communities, has long been a meeting place for many nations. As we gather on these lands, we acknowledge our deep responsibility to respect and cherish all that exists here: the land, waters, plants, animals, ancestors, and the sacred balance between them, guided by the wisdom of the four directions. This territory is part of the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, a profound agreement made between the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Anishinaabe, and allied nations to care and share for the land with peace and respect. We also recognize that the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation have a historical connection to this land, and we express our gratitude for their ongoing relationship with these territories. Miigwech. And on a personal note, I'm so grateful for harvest season, all of the fresh produce in the farmers markets, and the full moon last week. That was very powerful. And the bounty of nature. Thank you. So my name is Eleanor Hayward. I partly identify as a settler descendant. And I first learned about the the challenge that Indigenous people in Canada were facing since I don't know more in 2013. And that's when I first learned about residential schools. And I had literally been praying for Indigenous leadership in Halton region where I was living at the time. And when it was kind of coincidental, Jody, that it was like the pandemic hit, and an environmental group in Milton that I had been supporting, Sustainable Milton, had been supporting Grandmother's Voice to install your medicine garden at the Country Heritage Park there. And I've been attending your events and collaborating ever since. So I'm so grateful for your leadership, your co-founding of Grandmother's Voice. Thank you, Jody.
Hey, Nyawa, sorry, I was just reposting this live so that people can watch it with us on our pages. So, Nyawa, thank you so much, Eleanor, for still being here, for standing with me and continuing to walk on this path. You mentioned so much, grateful for the land acknowledgement. And every time, I get together with people, they say, oh, can I say it or should I say it? And I think it's so important that you just do whatever your heart feels. And the fact that you ask is all about respect. Who am I to say whether you can do or not do anything? I think that that's what Grandmother's Voice represents. And the work that I've always done in my life is that, like, who am I to say, to gatekeep or to say anything about what you do. We're here to be supportive of each other in this world together, interconnected. And so I'm grateful that we continue to stay connected in relationship. You support Grandmother's Voice as a volunteer. We text all the time. Our paths cross in community, and I'm super grateful that I'm here with you. And as you were sharing your words, I think there's a little bit of feedback here. Let us know if you can hear that on your end, where you're watching. So when you were speaking about in sharing your land acknowledgement that you created yourself, and then you always add your beautiful bit at the end about, your realities, lived realities. I'm there. I feel it. I'm looking outside my window and, looking at this beautiful tree that I offer my sema to and my offerings every morning, and the birds and the animals and the families that I see walking by. Like, that's what this is about. It's about being grateful in gratitude, in relationship. So just grateful that we have this platform that, we're using and we continue to use because it's there and we pay for it. And people ask. It's so wonderful for those of you who are joining us now or may join us later. This was something that just manifested over and during COVID, where the grandma said we need to reach the people. And in that time, I was the grandmothers and I were doing spending a lot of time together, learning. I was amplifying their voice and their presence in community, and I loved that. I really love supporting people in the best way that I can, and creating opportunities to learn and grow and to network. And I do know that that's my gift. I'm a networker and a connector. And so it's always great to create these opportunities to have conversations. And it's been a while since we've done something like this, in mainstream and out there for people to engage in. I do receive a lot of messages through Facebook. I don't know if people realize I'm on the receiving end of the context that comes in through the portal, but my personal Facebook is still connected to Grandmother's Voice, because when we started that, it was a grassroots. It's grassroots. It still is, and we're not at that level yet to separate and make it a whatever something on its own, because we still have to manage it. We're managing it through volunteer. Uh, and so we're in a time right now, and I want to, like, again, acknowledge people that are watching and that continue to show up for Grandmother's Voice. I had no idea the journey that I was going to be on. I think when we have that sense of what it is we believe we're going to do, or we know the path we want to take, the sense we have is never about the hard stuff. It's about igniting your essence of what you believe you can manage and handle and want to do, and see the change and believe in the change, and all of that is and was ignited. And I feel like I saw the vision in the moment of sensing and feeling what it was that needed to happen for me as an individual and as a person. And my husband does remind me, and my children do too, like, Mom, if it's just one person you're supporting, that's enough. And that's always been, the way I live. Even when I was a hairstylist, it was like, oh, you make people feel good in their their self and their essence, and adorn them with what they have. And so, yeah, that's why I love to do this, and why I continue to do this work and show up. So, Nyawa, and hello to those of you who are messaging and that are watching. Thanks, and let's have a conversation. Please feel free to drop some comments in in the chat. Uh, Eleanor and I have been going back and forth for the last year or so, seeing each other, and just every time we see each other, we talk about really passionate things happening in the world, passionate things to us. And there's a lot happening right now, and navigating sometimes is the challenging part. So, what's been on your mind, Eleanor?
Well, I am a recovering overthinker, so that's a big question. I was studying at McMaster from 2016 to 2020, social psychology and political science. So I learned a framework of referring the world. I was a registered massage therapist, for those who don't know me, and I wanted to move more into psychotherapy to help people with mental and emotional health. So that's at the root of reconciling humanity here, is how do we come together as a people? With sociology, I understand, like, it's easy to point fingers and say it's just one thing that's the problem, or one thing that's the solution. And my new frame of reference is realizing that there are macro effects, the institutional system that we're operating within. There's meso interpretations, that this is how we operate in community. And then there are micro inputs, that how we operate as individuals. Like you said, doing your hair. It's like, we want to show up as individuals powerfully in this world. And for me, it's healing trauma. That's really how we can move forward, so that when we do our inner work, that then if we love ourselves more, then we can love each other better as a community, and then we can influence our institutional structures with more love as well. So that is ultimately my philosophy. And I will give a shout out to Jennifer Hawkins, who actually created the land acknowledgement for one of our business together, the Love Your Vibe Transformation, led by Elvira V. Hopper. So that is a land acknowledgement that we read in our meetings. And I just find that this world is so fascinating, and it's so challenging. Like watching the news these days, it's like seeing authoritarianism coming, and it feels like it's like all of the signs of fascism and genocide are there. And these are the difficult conversations, because on a micro level, if we haven't done our inner work, our nervous system will perceive a challenge to our worldview the same as if our personal life is on the line. So that can be difficult for people, that if it's a challenging conversation. So I wanted to talk about it. I was inspired last week when I saw that video on Instagram, and I don't know if you want to pull it up and if we want to watch that whole video together, but it just inflamed me. Like I've got this seething rage underneath right now, in regards to the Bill 5 on the provincial level and the Bill C5 on the federal level, and how our present Conservative and Liberal governments, respectively, seem to not be honoring the Constitution in meaningful consultation with Indigenous peoples before they move ahead with resource extraction. Because at the end of the day, the government is a corporation, and it comes down to how do they manipulate resources and labor. And people are not happy with this. So there was a protest in Toronto on Canada Day, and or Takaranto, I believe is the Indigenous pronunciation. So please, I'd love to hear your thoughts on hard power and soft power, Jody, because this is ongoing since, settling Canada, North America, Turtle Island for hundreds of years, but it's still ongoing. I don't think people understand that colonialism is an ongoing value system. It's not just history. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on hard power and soft power and what that means to you.
Thoughts. I'm like exploding inside. It's like trigger. And okay, yeah, I'll play this. I think that everything that you were saying is, correct with the government. The thing that what I've noticed the most about the work that I'm doing in the region, and just connecting with the people, organizations, government levels, they have not done their homework. They have not done their own cultural humility training. They don't even understand that reconciliation should be in everything decision that we do, and they do especially. And so the fact that people are skipping over to consultation, why did they not consult with Indigenous people? It's the Canadians that should be saying, why have you not done reconciliation? Why have you not done that work? That's a part of the call to action. So I will play this video. I'm going to figure out how to, I'm going to get it going, because
share the screen.
I forgot. It's been a while since I've done this sharing on this platform. So let me see if I can get this up and hopefully get it to the right. There we go. I think this is it. Can you see it?
I can. Yes. There it is.
Need to back up, move back. Why are you out there in the back?
Yes, we should be saying watch for profanity, but you know what? This is real. The hell? You fucking fascist! I didn't see this in mainstream media, and then again, I've been off a bit. So these are our youth that are out there. What's the behavior of this?
For what? This is not your land. This is Indigenous land. You fascist pigs! No, we have a right to be here! We have a right! We have a right!
So it started with the protest. The cop took this person's bike.
Right? Like,
and then raking the gear.
Right? Like, how do you not be angry in this
Start
space?
throwing
How
rocks.
do you just like look the other way?
Stop pushing her! Stop pushing her!
Like, why can't they control themselves?
Stop! Stop! Stop!
I think it'd be ignorant for me to say that I know what. Push him back, all right? And you're gonna push him back. Get up to the bike, right? Back up!
Bikes are not weapons! Bikes are not weapons!
Fuck you! 1303. Need to back up! Back up!
So that was about
Hell.
2 weeks ago. And so for anybody who didn't quite see, that individual had about 4 cops on top of him, elbowing him in the back, punching
Right on his
him,
spine.
and then kneeing him in the head.
A couple times, like, just flew in like he was playing rugby or something. And, you know, like, the hell. I saw that. It made my stomach turn when you sent me that. I had seen it already, but I was like, I recently have had an accident, so I'm trying to really like stay in my healing Zen place. And yeah, that's our, like, that in itself, our police officers should be able to manage themselves, I think. So talk about healing trauma.
Yeah. And on that note, I can't remember what year it was, but when Alec Minayasin, who was the white van killer in Toronto, and he went up on the sidewalk and had, plowed through a bunch of people, and he later declared himself to be an incel, the involuntarily celibate. And Toronto police acted admirably. Like, they were able to de-escalate the situation and arrest him without violence and brutality.
Mm-hmm.
And so I thought that was part of Toronto's training, that their Toronto police's training. And this is just not acceptable behavior. To, like, they can passively arrest people if necessary. And I mean, and that's the challenge with a video like this. We didn't really see the context of what was going on. I understand it was a Bill 5 protest on Canada Day in Toronto. And I know you're supposed to get a permit before you protest. And it's like, and that video also said that in Toronto that they had recently instituted a new city bylaw, and that people in the crowd were wearing keffiyehs in support of Gaza and Palestine. And so it's part of the greater colonial mindset. Like, that's what I feel like colonialism, like I said, is an ongoing process. And there are people who believe in the value system of colonialism, which in my perspective is a combination of religious values, economic values of capitalism and neoliberalism since the late 70s, and also political values, right? That might makes right. That seems to be the overall value system that's in play here. And I also believe in passive resistance. So I understand that people in the crowd like escalated things in terms of like shouting at them. And that's where I feel like the inner work comes into it. It's like, how can we protest actually peacefully and not inflame the situation and still be standing for justice and equity? So that's my 2 cents on that. I feel
Education, education, right?
Yeah.
And
healing opportunity. So I feel like Toronto police have to answer for this. The mayor of Toronto, Olivia Chow, needs to answer for this. Doug Ford needs to answer for this. And Mark Carney, the prime minister, needs to answer for this, because I feel like this is a multi-tiered issue that
of course,
if we don't speak now, like this is only going to get worse.
yeah, and it's well, I think Carney has a meeting on the 17th or something, with the First Nations. But I mean, the reality is the inner, like you were saying, the inner work of yourself, democracy. I just finished. I actually vlogged about it. I might be sharing that later. About this course that I did with several of my girlfriends called Democracy. It's an inside job, and our facilitator was Carolyn Skelly, and she's awesome. She's also a volunteer at Grandmother's Voice, and she's a retired professor that is so passionate about this work of democracy, and it's so important that we understand. And it's everything that we're talking about is education. And if we really want to look at, like you were saying, the big pictures, the micro, the macro, we are a part of this bigger system. And we're in a country that is new, young. We've been living through industrialization, colonization, capitalism, like growing and building a country off the genocide of the original people here. Reconciliation has been like it's a framework. It's something that was created that's just sitting on the side burner, and people are pulling it in when they need it for money, when they don't really know what to do with it. There was no, this is how we should roll this out. Not like, there's so many layers of discussion here about why, the number one reason why Bill C and or C5 and 5 is not acceptable in this time right now. And it's about the reclamation and liberation of Indigenous people and where they belong in the government and making decisions. And instead of I'm just like, I have all these ideas, especially because, I've been building Grandmother's Voice off of the idea of democracy and Indigenous ways of knowing and being, and the frameworks that kept Indigenous people here and alive, especially, my ancestry being Haudenosaunee and the Great Law and all of those, beautiful treaties and understandings and laws about living together. And they, even though our countries like Turtle Island was created on that relationship and understanding that we are going to do this together, that it's not happening. And so they should not have, I think they should have a prime minister and a chief right beside each other. They make the decisions together at the table. They're included. Someday it's going to happen. And that if we're gonna make it work, it should be that they are sitting at the table together and not one leader. But just like we are composed of in our bodies, we have duality. We have the feminine and the masculine. And so in this country, Indigenous people were original and they deserve to be at the table all the time. And Mark Carney should know better. He should know better coming in at a time like this to put that bill on or through is disrespectful without understanding the true history and knowledge. And I don't believe that he's even done the education. The MPs in our community have not done the education. The MPPs have not done the education. The region, the municipalities, I feel like and here I go, I'm like, don't get too loud, Jody, but that's where I'm at as somebody who's been doing the work in a grassroots way to say, how do we really move forward as a community, elevating and uplifting and creating a space for Indigenous people who have been here always, but always left out. And everyone's quick to use the resources. They just don't know what to do. So I think education should be first. You can't go and hire Indigenous people when nobody understands what to do with the truth and reconciliation, 94 calls to action. Because I don't know anybody that's doing it right now. That's what I have to say about that, and especially our government. So shame on them that they didn't go reconciliation first and then consultation, and then let's look at this bill. It's just disappointing. And our children should be pissed.
Yeah.
They should be upset. They should be disappointed. They should be standing there, right? And let them. Yeah. And how can we help them? So, anyway, moving right along, I should probably light a little bit of medicine here.
Well, and that's it. There's that band Rage Against the Machine, right? It's like we can be angry and using that for action. And I remember when I went to a talk at McMaster when was it 492 Landback Lane? I might have the number wrong, but in Six Nations, where there was a development company that wanted to annex a chunk of the reserve for their development. And enough people were paying attention, because I respect that Indigenous peoples' way to cause the disruption to get attention to their issues is to generally block routes of transportation. So I think it was Highway 6 at the time and railways. And so that was getting people's attention. And some people were gathered in this room. And I remember another white person was like, well, what do we do about this? And the Indigenous woman at the front of the room, she says, like, that's like saying to an abused person, like, how do you get the abused person to tell you what to do against the abuser? That this is up to people who are settler descendants and refugees and everybody to stand up against a system that is oppressing ultimately everybody. Like, I enjoy rights and freedoms as a Canadian, but that being said, I understand my privilege. And I understand that not everybody has that. Like, people in Six Nations, not everybody even has fresh drinking water in Southern Ontario. That Ontario still has the greatest number of boil water advisories across Canada. And I think that there's some change on that, but it's not fast enough. Like, if Toronto didn't have drinking water, do you think they would be twiddling their thumbs like this for so long?
Oh yeah, I know. Sorry to cut you off.
Yeah.
The whole water situation. I mean, we can talk about it until we're blue in the face.
Yeah.
Like, the reality is like when Milton had a water problem and it was shut down, it was like fixed right away. Like, we're talking about matters and issues that they're afraid to talk about because they're afraid like Indigenous people are gonna take over. Like there's stuff they just push aside and pretend and act that this is more important. But the more that we continue to overlook what needs to be done, which is a foundational response and responsibility, is reconciliation. You can't do anything else besides that. And if we don't look at, South Africa, or like the other countries, like how long it took other countries to come through colonization, it should be happening faster here. We have technology, we have everything, we have the advancements, we have the resources, we have the brains, we have the smarts. What the problem is, Eleanor, is the people that are in the way, which is the whole democracy thing. And so, when we do this work, which I never in a million years thought that Grandmother's Voice was gonna, I thought people were gonna be like, yeah, and we were coming together. You were there at the very beginning at Country Heritage Park. Hundreds of people were coming to that garden. People were coming because it was time, and the graves, and the stories and the people were coming. And then, what got in the way? The systems got in the way. The people working within the systems got in the way. And that's the phase that we're in right now, that Alan and and the other elders that we work with, Dennis, when he teaches, his psychotherapy program and land-based program, is you have to understand the history before you can change within yourself and how you think and how you act. And so, at the beginning it was like, yeah, love, love, love. People were showing up. And then it was like, right? Indigenous people are waking up. They're starting to understand their responsibility. Then they're understanding, well, my role in this, and then in their role in the system, and having jobs within the government, having jobs within those systems of oppression. They have to live their life. Right? So Indigenous people are in those systems and they have a hard time navigating that, because then they're carrying all the burden. They're carrying the burden of being the Indigenous person. They're carrying the burden of building the programs. They're carrying the burden of educating everybody. And at the end of the day, like you were saying, the non-Indigenous folks are sitting back, taking it in. But at what point do they actually take on that work and stand alongside Indigenous people? We cannot do anything alone. We can't be in our own, like our life, without having balance. So what makes this country think that we should not be doing things in balance with the original people and the government? So yeah, I would love to just have a conversation with those people.
Absolutely. And like, so education, education, education. Because if you don't know what happened, it's really hard. It's easy to claim ignorance.
Yeah.
And if you only know part of the history, then it's like, well, a confused mind will do nothing, because if you don't know the full history. And I have heard it said that, like, that power. So we're talking about hard power and soft power. And I understand that, you know, as a sociological term for hard power being violence with guns, like kneeing somebody in the head, is hard power, versus soft power is the economic control.
Well, and having the badge, right? Having that power, right? Because me going up and punching somebody in the face, right, is yeah, that's aggressive power. But I'm no different if the person is an average person across, you know, and you know what I mean. It's like a pedestrian, like equality. We're two people having a fight, and whoever has the most money, you know, and a good lawyer, okay, that's power. That's hard power, right? That officer having a badge and having the right to, right? Because if he wasn't an officer, do you know how many people would have jumped that person? The average Joe would have probably jumped in and said, whoa, wait a minute here. You can't, you know, 5 guys on one guy. That doesn't work. We're all human. We know, we like talk about humanity. Yes. Right. But when you're standing there with you know, whether they're rubber bullets or not, you're in your power.
Yes. Right.
You're in your suit. Yeah, sorry, I'm pretty assertive right now. I'm feeling the energy.
I'm glad because this is an important conversation. And so, like, as another person, I'm just like, I am one person. What can I do? And so education. So I love going to Grandmother's Voice events, and your conferences, quite often, from what I can tell, tend to be education by the elders and others, with primarily, it seems to be healthcare workers and education workers. And you have like dozens of people learning at every event. And that is just so interesting to see, because healthcare workers and environment or education workers are on the front lines of dealing with the public every day. So it's important that their perspectives shift. So it is shifting. There's a ripple effect there. So I'm so proud of you for holding those events.
And it's not even me. This is because the elders are still here, and we're making space and place for them to do the transfer of the knowledge, because that's what they want. The elders that we work with are like, we need to reach the people. We cannot be putting this in the systems. We can't put them in the universities. We don't want to belong there while we're here, because we want to transfer the wisdom and honor the way, the oral traditions of our people. And so we've just created that opportunity, and not without the help of our community. Like it's probably the most, and I've done a lot of entrepreneurial work in my life. I've invented products. My husband and I have, you know, had several businesses, and we've had to recreate ourselves several times. This is the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life, and was several weeks ago, really contemplating that I don't want to do this anymore. I was really like, I'm done. I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this work. I don't need to be abused on social media. People were calling me Eleanor like months ago when I was really getting slandered by other Indigenous people. They were messaging me like, and I have emails from years, from 2018 when I started this work, to like just recent messages in my inbox, and my just different things, because my phone number is Grandmother's Voice. Can't afford to have separate numbers, right? So when people find that out, I'll tell you, the information and the things that they say to me is so horrible. I would never imagine sharing and saying the things that are coming from other Indigenous women, other Indigenous men, about me personally and who I am as an Indigenous, urban Indigenous person, that what I don't deserve and what I do deserve. And it's hard. It's hard no matter how much support I have from elders and people. I'm a human being. waking up every day, offering, my gratitude and living and wanting to do better and wanting to understand my place in society and understanding my ancestry and what I teach my children. And my family has sat back and watched this continued lateral violence that still happens. And the grandmas say, brush yourself off and don't pay attention to that. And you can do that only for, so much. And then something like this happens, right? Where I had this accident, radical, like crazy accident. When I tell people how it happened, they're like, what? And it stops you. And I've been considering, like, really sitting with it, meditating, praying, asking for clarity, because my spirit knows exactly why it happened. And so many people are like, oh, you need to slow down. Those people that are like trying to cheer you up. And I'm just like, screw off, like, let me just be in my healing or my space right now. But of course we need to slow down. This is so spiritual for me, and the work that I've done for so long. When you do this work, because I know you've been in school and you're spiritual and you do healing, so you understand when you go inside and make those changes about, like, constitutionally, like, you're looking at everything that happened to you in your lifetime and what you do every day, and you're constantly aware of who you are and what your purpose is and how you can be better every day and accountable to yourself. When this happened, I was like, what? What? I was so, slowed down. I was preparing. I was ready. And then it was like, oh yeah, you're ready. All right. Yeah. I'm going to pull you right out of that soil, and you're going to put your roots where your next level, where you're supposed to be. And a lot of that has to do with, speaking my own truth. I've had a lot of really amazing guidance by some really beautiful elders and grandmothers, and guiding and understanding who I am, like, supporting that. And I, through grandmother's voice, have always wished that what we could do here is to give that to other people. How do you connect to your true source and live in your purpose without all of that other noise? Because that's, I think, truly what you and I always talk about is when you are in your purpose and in your source and know what your purpose, like what you do, you don't really pay attention to those Instagrams, right? You say, okay, I see it, I'm going to send love to it. And what can I do? Because if we sit too long in that, maybe this happens.
And it makes us sick if we sit in that rage without being in alignment and taking action in a way that's authentic. That when we learn how to settle our nervous system, I feel like that's where the inner work comes in. But I want to touch back on something that you said, like, but what's at the root of the lateral violence? Because it's awful that you experience that, like, on a meso level from your own community. Yeah. And what's at the root of that?
Reconciliation. They haven't even done their work. Like, I've always thought that, like, that grandmother's voice, we were building community to support and educate each other and build capacity, knowing that you can know, and I think that this is a lot for Indigenous people, and I'm being very broad about this, but what I know that is, when I didn't know what I know now, I guessed a lot, or I didn't know, so maybe I was angry at certain situations, or, like, until you really know the truth. And so we know genocide, we know these things happened, the historical timeline of the Indian Act and 60 Scoop, we know that all of that happened. But how did that affect our society today and us as individuals? And where do you fit in on that historical timeline as it applies to you as a person? And I don't believe that Indigenous people really, they're claiming their indigeneity. They're claiming that they, were raised on the reserves, or they were raised in urban, or they were 60 scoop, and they got their status card, or they were raised with their status card, or whatever their journey is. Have they really learned about the history and how it has affected them in their lives in this moment, thinking about like a person's constitution, knowing that everything that has happened to us in our life today, where we are, you and I speaking today, have we considered how we got here, and what our role and responsibility is in all of that? And I don't know that people really, Indigenous people, understand why they would even not support, or why they would, be abusive or not stand beside another Indigenous person, regardless of what they believe in. Indigenous people are liberating themselves right now in so many different ways. If we look at what's happening in the world, and even the 94 calls to action, it was strategic. It was amazing. There was no action plan with it. I don't think so. Here's 94 calls to action, and here are choices. But I mean, strategically, if you're looking at it from like a perspective of resources and funding, and how do you really make that happen, you look at the most important people in it, and the most important people are Indigenous people. How do you support them in that moment? So I think like there's just so much so much education needed. And again, that's the lateral violence. Education, and anger is fair. Anger is an emotion that is completely safe and okay and respected. For me anyway, you're allowed to be angry. You're getting closer. You're getting closer, right? To what it is you need to know. But if you don't have the tools, then you sit in that anger, and then it perpetuates and projects.
Yes, that is a fascinating concept to me, because I understand anger to be a valid emotion, that it's indicating where our boundaries lie and where our needs are not being met, and that we are all human, and the essence of humanity is empathy, and that we are all inherently worthy of dignity and respect. And how can we work together? I love the Indigenous philosophy of how do we plan for 7 generations in the future, whereas the system that we're currently in is looking at short-term quarterly profits. And so those are inconsistent mindsets. So colonialism is like, it's the institutional system, but it's in our mindset. And let's be honest here, Indigenous people have been colonized. So there is this
totally
value system that we're all there, and we're decolonizing ultimately, or uncolonizing, depending on how you want to look at that. And ultimately the intergenerational trauma, I feel like that's an important bit to touch on, because that, I felt like, became a buzz term after the children were found in that residential school in BC a few years ago. And meanwhile, I heard funding was slashed for ongoing exploration and exhuming bodies. So just as an example.
What is that? Survivor Secretariat. OFIFC has had to restructure. The Native Women's Association. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, so I look at that. What are the resources? How do we create them? And then I look at the whole of every First Nations is their own nation, is their own business in themselves, right? We're talking, like you said, Canada's a corporation. The First Nations are corporations, and urban Indigenous people, there's 80-something% of Indigenous people are urban, right? If you belong to a First Nations, if you have rights, or however that looks, we're still trying to figure out like how, and this is why I think it's so important to awaken the non-Indigenous people who are also colonized, that this is important for you. that if you're not standing with Indigenous people about the bill and you're getting caught up in the, oh, those Indigenous people, there they go again, there they go again. It's not even about that. You need to just stand with us because it's going to affect you regardless. It's going to affect our people, our children, our everybody. There's just so much. And I really wish that, I mean, I see a lot of programming, especially in the region, because, our goal has been to, first it was like build a center. That was the first thing we said we needed, was build a center for Indigenous people. And then we find out, well, there's these other organizations and there's people finding out how do you do that. So that's been a feat for us. So we're just like working with community members that are in organizations that say, hey, let us help build this space. So that people can gather and learn about culture. So when you say that we brought in healthcare providers and, frontline workers, we do that because we know that they're already serving Indigenous people. We know this because being urban, I'm assimilated. My great grandmother was enfranchised, like all of that. So we are living here as an urban Indigenous person that's not really counted. Our voice is not counted. And so that's always been my vision, is to create a space for that urban Indigenous voice to say, hey, here's how you can understand history and come and learn from these elders. And at the same time, having, knowing that frontline work and healthcare, they have the budget to pay for that kind of education. So we make the space open for all people, Indigenous, non-Indigenous, frontline, but as from a business perspective, and creating opportunities for business and knowing that, what we do has overhead, because we don't really do it on fully funded grants yet. It's about education and bringing people together. So it's always been open to, we're all one. Those are the teachings for everyone.
Yes.
I know. Did we go off there for a little bit?
That's okay. I feel like it's all relevant. And so again, coming back to intergenerational trauma, like I feel like that at a micro level, that the essence of trauma is not what happened, but trauma is how our nervous system adapted, or is maladapted, frankly. Right. And that's when, like, our amygdala in our brain is a little bit bigger and it perceives threats, but it doesn't perceive present threats accurately. We tend to bounce back to the past, and how that, like, will overreact tends to be how the intergenerational trauma can play out, or it even will turn out to be a judgment, or it'll be a denial. It's fear. So that lateral violence, that people are afraid, so they'll project, as you were saying, they will project that fear onto others, and it'll become a control mechanism. It becomes like we're perpetuating this power over dynamic, or a power under dynamic. So like power over being like the bully victim energy, or the bully perpetrator energy, pardon me. And then the power under is the victimized. Like, we've been victimized. It's not our fault that we've been victimized. And yet if we don't do the inner work, we're feeling like, oh, the woe is me. And then we're afraid that it's going to happen again. So we try to, like, pull other people down.
Yeah. And intergenerational. Yeah, of course. Of course it makes sense to me, because I study that with Dennis and Alan and the elders and the grandmas. And that's how, where we are in society right now, is we're so lucky that this is where we are. Individuals are teaching other individuals how to be present, how to heal themselves, how the brain works. We have it at our fingertips. To understand this, right? And where we want to be, and how we work in the world together. I think of this, of course, the micro individually. And so when you do that work and you understand it, automatically my mind goes to the macro. Like, how can I, with my own individual ways and understanding, help those macro places, the bigger places that have all the people within them, help the multiple people? Because if we do one at a time,
yes,
we might as well be back there in the 1500s, but we're not. So how do we tell people to wake up and know that their voice is important and do the work? Because the reality is we've all been traumatized by our community. Look at COVID. We all have the same trauma, right? The collective trauma of that. But I really do believe that the people that, and we say in our world, business world, low hanging fruit, who do we need to educate? Who needs to understand this, this micro way of living and being? It's our leaders, and they don't.
And I would, and again, that feels like an absolute, and I feel like it's slowly, like if they want to, that there's like elements of it, because I don't want to point fingers and say that they're not. And it's evident in the policy evolution that it's not really happening, but I want to believe that individuals are doing the work little by little.
Let's hope so.
Because there is still like party discipline, as an example. So MPs need to generally fall in line so that even if they do have contrasting viewpoints in their own career, it's challenging for them to stand up against their own party sometimes. But I want to have faith that representatives are doing that inner work. But that's part of the colonial system. And I just want to make it clear, because it's to have intergenerational trauma on behalf of Indigenous people as those being colonized. But I also want to input that as the history of the oppressor, that there's also intergenerational trauma on behalf of settlers. That I remember watching that film, The Patriot, with Mel Gibson way back. And my mom, I remember her looking at me and she said, "You know, we were the redcoats, right?" And I'm like, what? Like, that my history was on behalf of the villains, or the people who wanted to colonize. And the US was fighting for their independence at the time in the film. And it's like, I understand that. And I've done that intergenerational healing, like, and dealt with my own tendency to want to power over others, because it's still in my body. And I feel like that's what people who are listening, that there's always inner work to do, no matter which side you're on, because we ultimately have to come together and realize that we're all in this together in the 7 generations philosophy. So I wanted to ask you about the 7 sacred fires teaching. And I know it's a longer discussion. I did hear that story at one of the Grandmother's Voice events, but if you can sum it up to be like, what is the prophecy of us coming together?
Well, I'm not one to speak of it. I know I've sat with it and listened to Alan many times. If you actually go to our Grandmother's Voice Facebook page or YouTube channel, you'll see that he's actually we started a series 3 months ago. He just finished his 3rd. So I have no right to share teachings. What I do know is it's always about coming together. And I mean, they're beautiful stories and from different nations. And I'm recently doing my genealogy on my own in Ojibwe connection and Anishinaabe roots. So I'm, what I will say is that it's inherent in all of us. And why I think grandmothers in general, their teachings are so beautiful is that we can talk about these ancient stories. We can talk about these teachings. We can talk about what's, carved in stone but we as individual people have to do better at being good people. Keeping your emotions and your feelings without lashing out. Those are things we teach our children. These are just, right? These are just like morals and ethics that we return to. And when you can do those things in for yourself and acknowledge when you are out here, acknowledge when you feel rage, acknowledge when and when is it the right time? Is it not the right time? Do better for yourself. There's so many resources out there to do better for yourself, to learn how you can. And when you start to get a grasp on your own self, then you can start thinking about how you can take care of others. But in the meantime, I think that's one of the best, like for the 7 grandfather teachers, you can ask your elders, you can go online, you could probably Google it. I do know that Alan has beautiful teachings, and he started it from like the beginning, the big boom. They're like, how did we get here? How did you and I become people? And what are we made of? What is the world made of? And the end of his series is going to speak about where we are right now in this time and how important it is for all people to come together to deal with the colonization, to stand up for the people who, like this country, the indigenous people were here. They're here. Our goal as indigenous people, I mean, as non-indigenous people, and as just as people, is to do our best to embed indigenous wisdom and knowledge and representation everywhere we go, and do our best to be in relationship and honor each other like we would our own selves. And that's tricky, because depending on how you were raised and the trauma you were raised in, do you even know what it means to be in relationship with somebody in a good way? So there's a lot to deal with. And I think that if we just, follow Alan's series and grow with him. And at the end, you'll be ready to contribute to the eighth fire. When you know that you are ready to show up, no matter the pain, no matter what it is, you just continue to show up to be a better person and to stand with indigenous people. As long as you live in this country, your role should be reconciliation first, to make sure that in every indigenous person, right, and thing living should be taken care of equally. And then we'll all be taken care of. And we'll all eat, like Uncle Mike talks about the dish with one spoon. You mentioned it, right? That wampum between the Haudenosaunee and an Anishinaabe about, we have this land together and the resources, and we will take care of them and each other. And, we'll all be fed. If one person isn't fed, then we're not fed, right? Like this is the way that it should be. And we can't make deals and bills and contracts and then think that you've left out the people in those communities and not include them in those conversations, and you're just going to go ahead and build the world because you think that that's the right thing to do. It's unacceptable.
Alan is amazing. Like, he's just such a kind and gentle soul, and his background as an educator with the timeline is phenomenal, to recognize that history of colonization and how that happened, and his calling to introduce that to politicians, to other educators, to individuals, so that we understand the past, so that we can move together with solutions, is very helpful. But it's also this calling to settle our nervous system as well, to do that inner work, that inner healing. And there's, like, all of the solutions are out there. It literally takes willpower. And I mean, it does take a degree of privilege to have time to explore and to practice that healing work. And it is a lifelong journey, but so that we can envision a better future. Because I feel like when we're stuck in our trauma, it's like, then we start to feel desperate, or we start to feel that it's hopeless, and we're just trying to get by day to day to survive. And I guess that's, there's so much I want to say, but Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? It's like you have to meet people's basic needs so that they can evolve as an individual. But even understanding that Maslow's hierarchy of needs was borrowed, or I would hazard to say plagiarized, from Indigenous people in the Alberta Blackfoot Nation, that it was meant to be taking care of the individual as the base of taking care of the community.
Of course.
And you talk about morals and ethics. And I feel like that's a big part of, like, when we settle our nervous system, that we can come to our humanity, we can come to our empathy and feel for each other. And I'm a little bit disappointed in our Prime Minister. I listened to his audiobook, Values, and he spoke a lot about morals and ethics in economics, and how the government's role in keeping the market in check. And because the market is inherently exploitative, it seems, in capitalism. And I believe in the faith of I believe in individuals. And I really hope that his meeting, as you said, with Indigenous people is fruitful, but yet the reconciliation needs to be at the root of that. And how can we plan for 7 generations ahead? So that's, I think, kind of wraps it up in a little bit of a bow today, Jody. I
just want to actually, before we go, Eleanor, I see a question here about healthcare, and
yes.
I appreciate this so much, because I was recently having to have some support from the healthcare industry. And also we do some work with healthcare. And the question is, how do healthcare workers settle their nervous systems when the system basically ignores the realities we all live in? And real, that is so real. And just observing in these spaces and knowing that we hope, like you were saying, Eleanor, that we believe that our administrative people, the people in control and making decisions, they're doing their best to create spaces that honor the individual needs as a healthcare provider and as someone coming in for service. And so it is so imperative that the healthcare put the providers first. This is like that whole, put your mask on your face before you help anybody. And I'm a firm believer in that, in that if they don't take care of our healthcare workers, and they have to flip that. It has to be flipped, and they have to do it. And I think that I think it's so important to know that. And the experiences that I had, I've seen the gaps, and I'm excited to share with the organizations that we work with in our area how they can implement so that they can actually relieve situations within their institutions that really, I guess, remove those opportunities for anxiety right from the get-go. You have people coming in that are sick in a place that they want they're keeping them there. And I mean, there's so much around that, but I really believe that, Greg, take care of yourself first. And if there's anything that I know about Indigenous wisdom and their ethics and their belief systems, is that you are a tree. You are that natural world, part of that natural world, and that you can root yourself and surround yourself with the right energies and tools when you're doing that work, and demand them in your workplace to have them available to you, whether it be a smudging room for your own self, because this is where I don't believe that that Indigenous sage or ceremony or anything like that is just for Indigenous people. We're in a time where our medicine is for everyone, and it should have been like that from the very beginning. And that's what the elders say. If we did this properly at the very beginning, because we did have a relationship and we agreed to it, that we were going to live in love and peace and friendship and harmony, and take care of the water and take care of the land and the air, and take care of each other. And then it got out of control. And so we need to go back to those belief systems that we are taking care of inside. And that is learning how to take care of your nervous system in your own way, being outside in nature and taking care of yourself. So Nyawa, and we'll continue on this end to do the work that we can to unite people in love, and just knowing that it's time for change. And we know that because of how much is happening right now in the world. And they did talk about, the waters showing us and telling us that it's time for change, and that's happening, right? The imbalance in the natural world that's happening right now. Mm-hmm. So I think that the message that here today is to listen to yourself, spend some time outside in the land, in the water right now, telling Mother Earth how much you love her, and then giving her, taking what she's offering you to nurture yourself. I love you, Eleanor.
I love you, Jody.
Thanks for those of you who listened to us go off for a little bit. It feels so good. I needed it.
Yes, thank you. And I just want to touch on the healthcare workers, because absolutely, because the colonized system undersupports and underfunds our healthcare and education, and it's getting worse. Frankly, it's privatizing. That's the neoliberalism that I mentioned. And I massage healthcare workers in hospitals, and I know that they're between a rock and a hard place of caring for people, and yet they don't feel cared for. So I totally respect that. And yet I also know on the micro level, when we do the inner work, we have better boundaries. We can love ourselves more and respect ourselves more when we heal our inner trauma, so that the boundary, like that we can not take other people's shit personally, that we can then have a greater perspective, is ultimately my perspective on that. And that is a privileged perspective as an entrepreneur. So I really do, I have such gratitude to healthcare and education workers. And I'm so grateful when they take the time to go to Grandmother's Voice events and expand that perspective and open that gateway to healing. So thank you, Jody, for creating that space for our community, for everybody to come and to learn and to reflect and to heal. Thank you.
Thank you. And just to say that, save the date for September 20th, Saturday. We are doing another event. Alan just confirmed he'll be in town. Dennis, we're going to continue to move forward with gathering the people the best way that we can. And, I'd like to say and offer, Greg, to you, thank you so much for sharing your heart and your love with the people around you in your system. Patience, so important. I think that I saw something when I was in emergency at the hospital, and they were walking around with a cart for snacks and coffee for the people working, right? So for the emergency staff, I love it. It was wonderful. I think they should do that with a smudge. I think that they should be able to go in every once in a while and offer something, whatever that is, figure out what that is and what it's needed. And I really believe that when we get past thinking that, we have to check with everyone to make sure, that we're doing it in a good way, and, that everyone's culture is, appreciated the same way. No, you know what? We live in Canada. We live in Canada. We live in Turtle Island. They are first. That's what I think. And I believe that is so important. And that's why I say reconciliation is first. And when we can do that in a good way and an honest way, we will all continue to, I guess, heal together. And maybe that's when the eighth fire is lit, and maybe we'll all hear that teaching together. So again, and I'm in Oakville here, Pam, and Eleanor is in Hamilton. I think Hamilton.
I live in Hamilton. I'm presently in Burlington, where I work. Yes.
And we are creating this line of communication. It goes across our Facebook and YouTube channel, and you can sign up. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you can like our Facebook page, and you'll be informed every time that we go live. So, and thank you to everyone who joined us today and who we who we'll visit with later. And Eleanor and I are going to keep these conversations coming. And there'll be a few more other live streams that you'll be catching on Facebook live. So watch for us. Take care. Enjoy yourself. Get out in the water.
Thank you.